Welcome to the Daily News Currents. Today is Wednesday, November 6th, and for today's headlines we have U.S. braces for foreign election threats, especially in swing states. Russia plotted to put incendiary devices on cargo planes, officials say. Boeing union approves new contract, ending costly strike. Feeling the stress of Election Day? Here are a few healthy ways to cope. And baby haggis is the new moo dang. A pygmy hippo is born in Edinburgh. U.S. braces for foreign election threats, especially in swing states. Officials anticipate a rise in false narratives, but do not expect cyber attacks on local voting infrastructure. Federal officials are bracing for an increase in efforts by foreign adversaries to undermine the U.S. elections, but said they had not seen any national-level threats so far on Election Day. On Monday night, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the FBI, and intelligence agencies issued an unusual warning that adversaries, led by Russia, were conducting additional influence operations. On Tuesday, Kate Conley, a senior official with the Cybersecurity Agency, said she expected an increase in the scope and scale of the influence efforts. Adversaries have taken lessons learned from previous cycles to understand which narratives would be the most effective, she said. In the second of several briefings scheduled on Tuesday, Ms. Conley said the foreign adversaries had two goals: undermining confidence in the voting and sowing partisan discord among Americans. And she said that foreign countries were trying to hide their hand as they pushed the narratives. We should expect to see narratives around those types of objectives, both today and in the days to come, she said. The federal officials provided few details on reports of local disruptions, urging the public to listen to local and state officials. With all the noise and disinformation out there, what Americans need to really realize is that your state and local election official is the signal through that noise. But that is your source for authoritative information on election security, she said. Federal officials have tried to quickly call out foreign influence campaigns and singled out Russia's efforts to spread false information that destroyed ballots in Pennsylvania, illegal voting in Georgia, and voter fraud in Arizona. Earlier on Tuesday, Ms. Conley said the foreign influence efforts have been focused on swing states. Court documents released this fall detailed a Russian plan that concentrated on swing states in order to boost the chances of former President Donald J. Trump. While Russia favors Trump, Iran has been supportive of Vice President Kamala Harris, according to intelligence officials. An American official said on Tuesday that U.S. intelligence and law enforcement agencies have tracked Iran activity in recent days, but that Iran has been less active than Russia. Ms. Conley said that based on past campaigns, federal officials were watching for Iranian activity on Election Day and the days after the vote. We remain vigilant to see if Iranian activity targeting this election cycle, she said. Learning from what they conducted their influence activities in the 2020 cycle, we understand that this is a window of time where they've historically targeted. Ms. Conley emphasized that foreign adversaries had little ability to change votes without being detected. The threats involve false narratives that the election was compromised, she said, not cyber attacks on local voting infrastructure like voting machines. Our election infrastructure has never been more secure, and the election infrastructure community has never been better prepared to deliver safe, secure, free, and fair elections, she said. The intelligence agency's Foreign Malign Influence Center began tracking threats to the election in 2022, and broader efforts by adversaries to covert sway Americans. The center included the intelligence agency's election threat executive, who coordinates intelligence about foreign adversaries' work to sway the vote. Throughout the election season, intelligence officers briefed lawmakers and reporters about the center's conclusions, focusing on Russia and Iranian plans to secretly influence voters. While the briefings were initially broad and high level, in recent days, the warnings from the U.S. government have shifted, calling out specific pieces of disinformation that could mislead voters or that have begun to gain traction on social media. The center collects information from all of the intelligence agencies as well as American partners who are watching for foreign efforts to sway their elections. The intelligence agencies also have exchanges with technology firms and universities that are collecting their own information about influence operations. Microsoft is one of the largest firms tracking election threats, has regularly shared its intelligence on influence campaigns with the U.S. government and the public at large. This year, Microsoft's Threat Analysis Center has tracked a variety of Russian and Iranian groups trying to influence the vote. Microsoft said that while many of the Russian groups began focusing on the war in Ukraine or the Paris Olympics, most all of them were focused on the U.S. election by the fall. Russia plotted to put incendiary devices on cargo planes, officials say. Western officials are investigating whether devices planted at shipping hubs in Europe may have been a test run by Russian operatives for placing them on planes bound for the U.S. Russia has been plotting to place incendiary devices on cargo planes in Europe, even performed a test run this summer, setting off fires at shipping hubs in Britain and Germany, according to 3 Western officials briefed on intelligence about the operation. The effort represents a potentially significant escalation of the Kremlin's sabotage operations against Western adversaries. The goal of the plot, orchestrated by Russia's military intelligence agency, the GRU, is not entirely clear, according to 2 of the officials, all of whom spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive intelligence matters. It could have been what ultimately occurred, to set fires with incendiary devices placed at logistical hubs belonging to the packaging shipping company DHL, perhaps meant to instill fear or deliver a warning. But Western intelligence agencies are also investigating whether Moscow intended something more ambitious and menacing, such as destroying planes on American runways, setting off bombs at U.S. warehouses, or even blowing up an aircraft mid-air. The operation is an effort by Russian President Vladimir V. Putin to inflict damage on the West for its support of Ukraine's military, officials said. The Kremlin's goal appears to shake Western backing for Ukraine, or failing that, exact the price for it. Excuse me, sorry. In the first 2 years of the war with Ukraine, the Kremlin largely avoided directly provoking Kyiv's allies, particularly those belonging to NATO, officials said, fearful of a dangerous escalation. Today, any such reticence appears to have dissolved, they said. Hostile activity carried out on behalf of the Russian Federation is increasingly taking the form of terrorist activities, Poland's domestic intelligence service said in a communique published last month. The Kremlin has denied that its agents engaged in sabotage. The incendiary devices were planted at DHL shipping hubs in Leipzig, Germany, and Birmingham, England, the Western officials said. The fires caused minimal damages and no injuries, they said, but the blazes raised the frightening specter of bombs potentially being loaded on the aircraft. The Wall Street Journal described details of the plot on Monday. In a statement, DHL, whose global headquarters are in Germany, confirmed 2 recent incidents involving shipments in our network. We are fully cooperating with the relevant authorities, protect our people, our network, and our customers' shipments, the statement said. Last month, the Polish authorities announced the arrest of 4 suspects involved in planting the incendiary devices. The country's National Prosecutor Office said the plot had been part of a test run with the ultimate goal of putting explosive devices on planes bound for the United States and Canada, though the West officials could not confirm that this was the intent. It is possible that Russia wanted the option of eventually blowing up cargo planes flying to or over America, but the officials briefed on the intelligence said that would be a stark change from Russia's current strategy of horizontal escalation, in which Moscow seeks to carefully manage its responses to Allied support to Ukraine. Blowing up a plane over the United States, which will revive memories of the September 11, 2001 attacks, would provoke a strong retaliation from Washington, something Moscow has wanted to avoid. But Western intelligence agencies have not completely ruled out the possibility that Moscow wants to at least the option of carrying out such a provocative attack. That would especially be true if the United States enables Ukraine to strike deeper into Russia or provides Kyiv with more powerful weaponry, something that the Biden administration has so far resisted. The Transportation Security Administration in recent months have added security measures for U.S. aircraft operations and foreign air carriers regarding certain cargo shipments bound for the United States, a spokesperson for the agency said in a statement. A U.S. government official, speaking on condition of anonymity, said that at the time there was no current active threats targeting U.S.-bound flights. The plot is part of a broader Russian campaign of sabotage in Europe, including vandalism, arson, and physical attacks on individuals, officials say. In February, 2 assassins suspected of ties to the Russian intelligence services killed a Russian defector in southern Spain. Last spring, U.S. intelligence agencies uncovered a Russian plot to kill the chief executive of a German arms manufacturer, and in Estonia, several people are on trial on charges of committing acts of vandalism in the behest of Russian intelligence operations, including breaking the car windows of a country's interior minister. The scale of Russia's attempts to sow discord across Europe and the use of untrained criminals mean that it is very probable that at some point there may be an attack where someone is killed or a civilian is severely harmed. A spokesperson for Estonia's Internal Security Service said in a statement recently sent to the New York Times. Officials cautioned that it can be difficult to definitively attribute apparent acts of sabotage to Russian intelligence services, in particular when they use local criminal proxies who may not even know who they're working for. There also have been cases in which Russia's agents, a secret communication with their bosses, have taken credit for events they have nothing to do with, officials said. The sabotage campaign is being waged almost exclusively by the GRU, officials say. It is an agency that European security officials have long been familiar with. In 2018, operatives from the agency used a highly potent nerve agent in the attempted assassination of Sergei Skripal, a GRU defector who was living in Britain. The agency was behind a similar assassination attempt against a Bulgarian arms manufacturer, as well as explosions at weapon plants in the Czech Republic and a thwarted coup in Montenegro, according to Western security officials. After Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the GRU's activities in Europe abated somewhat as European countries expelled operatives and limited travel for Russians. But in the past year, the agency has figured out ways to restore its operations. The GRU in particular is on a sustained mission to generate mayhem on British and European streets, Ken McCallum, the Director General of Britain MI5, the country's domestic intelligence service, warned a rare public remark last month. We've seen arson, sabotage, and more, dangerous acts conducted with increasing recklessness. Even so, officials say it's harder for Russian intelligence services to operate on European territory than it once was. Starting in 2018 and continuing through the start of war in Ukraine, European countries have expelled hundreds of Russian intelligence officers. A number of deep cover Russian operatives, called illegals, have also been identified and arrested. This has left the intelligence services, particularly the GRU, increasingly reliant on criminal proxies, often hired over the internet, to carry out acts of sabotage, officials say. These proxies are relatively inexpensive to use and give Russian intelligence services a degree of deniability, but they are also unreliable and prone to poor discipline that can lead to botched operations. They can't use their own people. They're having to do with criminal elements. Richard Moore, the head of MI6, Britain's Foreign Intelligence Service, said in a public remarks in September, "Criminals do stuff for cash. They are not reliable, they're not particularly professional, and therefore, usually we're able to roll them up pretty effectively. It's not amateurish, it's just a little bit more reckless." I think the Russian intelligence services have gone a bit feral, he added. Boeing union approves new contract, ending costly strike. About 33,000 workers at the aerospace manufacturer had been on strike for nearly 2 months after it rejected 2 earlier contract offers. Members of Boeing's largest union approved a new contract on Monday, ending a weeks-long strike that was one of the country's most financially damaging work stoppages in decades. The contract was endorsed by 59% of those voting, according to the union, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. The union represents around 33,000 workers, most of whom make commercial airplanes in the Seattle area. More than 3/4 of the members voted on the contract. The union said its members, who have resoundingly voted down 2 previous contract offers from Boeing, could return to work as soon as Wednesday, but must be back by next Tuesday. The strike began on September 13th, after the union rejected the company's first proposal. "You stood strong, you stood tall, and you won. This is a victory," said John Holden, the president of District 751, of the Machinists Union, which represents the vast majority of workers covered by the contract. The new contract will raise wages more than 43% cumulatively over the next 4 years, an improvement over the two previous offers. The first proposal would have raised wages just over 27%. Union leaders and Boeing had urged the workers to approve the deal. The union's leadership had warned that future offers from the company could have worse terms than this proposal. In a statement, Boeing's chief executive, Kelly Ortberg, said he was pleased that the agreement had been reached. While the past few months have been difficult for us all, we are all part of the same team, he said. We will only move forward by listening and working together. Mr. Ortberg, who joined the company in August, is trying to restore Boeing's reputation and business after multiple setbacks in recent years. Last month, he announced plans to cut about 17,000 jobs, or 10% of Boeing's global workforce, and make other changes. Boeing recently reported it lost more than $6.1 billion in the 3 months that ended in September. Last week, it raised more than $21 billion by selling shares to investors, an effort to strengthen its financial position and stave off the loss of its investment-grade credit rating. Moody's Ratings and Fitch Ratings both described the fundraising as a positive step, but they are still reviewing whether to downgrade Boeing's credit rating to junk status, which could raise its borrowing cost. The contract talks were contentious because workers had grown frustrated with the company's management. Many were still angry over labor negotiations a decade ago, when the union agreed to let Boeing freeze a pension plan that included guaranteed monthly retirement payouts. Even though the company was unlikely to agree to restore that pension, workers pushed for better benefits elsewhere in the contract to make up for that concession. Officials in the Biden administration had closely monitored the negotiations, which began in March. After talks broke down last month, officials helped to bring the two sides back to the table. Both Boeing and the union thanked the acting labor secretary, Julie Su, who made 3 trips to Seattle to help facilitate the discussions that resulted in the deal. In a statement, President Biden congratulated Boeing and the union. Good contracts benefit workers, businesses, and consumers. In addition to the increase in wages, the new contract includes a $12,000 ratification bonus, which is 4 times as much as the bonus in the initial offer. The deal calls for improved retirement benefits and a commitment by Boeing to build its next commercial airplane in the Seattle region. We've never gotten that before. They've never given us a commitment on an airplane program before it's launched, before it's designed, Mr. Holden said at a news conference after the results were announced. Boeing has said that an average annual pay of machinists will rise to more than $119,000 by the end of the contract, up from nearly $76,000 today, after those raises and other benefits are taken into account. The walkout's financial toll rivals one involving workers in General Motors of 1998 and at UPS in 1997, according to an analysis by Anderson Economic Group, a research and consulting firm in Michigan. Boeing had suffered at least $5.5 billion in lost earnings in the first 6 weeks of the strike, according to the firm. The total economic fallout, including its effect on Boeing's suppliers and customers, was more than $9.6 billion. In response to the strike, Boeing took several cost-cutting measures, including pausing some spending and issuing temporary furloughs for tens of thousands of other employees. Some of the company's suppliers have taken similar measures. The contract replaces a 2008 agreement reached after a 2-month strike that was modified and extended multiple times since. That strike contributed to the decline in Boeing's revenue of about $6.4 billion that year because the company delivered 104 fewer planes than expected. Most of the striking workers were based at factories in the Seattle area, where Boeing makes several commercial airplanes, including its most popular jet, the 737 MAX. The MAX accounts for 3/4 of the 6,200 planes Boeing has on order, but production is far short of the company's target because of a crisis that began in January when a panic blew off a MAX airplane during an Alaska Airlines flight. The episode renewed concerns about the quality and safety of Boeing planes 5 years after 2 fatal crashes involving the MAX. In response to the panel blowout, the Federal Aviation Administration capped MAX production at 38 planes per month. Production was well below that number before the strike. Feeling the stress of Election Day? Here are a few healthy ways to cope. Here's a bipartisan sentiment. The election has Americans of both parties stressed out. 8 in 10 Republicans and Democrats put politics on their list of biggest stressors, according to the survey by the American Psychological Association. That sentiment may be hitting an election cycle high today as we close out what has perhaps been the most dramatic presidential race in modern history. From the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump this summer to Vice President Harris taking over the Democratic ticket, and the fear that political polarization and threats of violence will continue after the election, a lot has happened this year. People are now more aware about these events and the rest of the world, contributing to what they are stressed about. Dr. Joshua Stein, a psychiatrist from the Twin Cities area of Minnesota, told Morning Edition. And so what we're seeing is that many people may have stressors that, unlike 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, they really can't do much about, Stein said. The constant barrage of news, particularly around the election this year, can leave people feeling helpless, he added. We need to be aware of when we reach that point. What can we do to help ourselves center, get ourselves back to the wisdom, Stein said. How can you recognize and deal with this election stress? When stress starts affecting your appetite, sleep routine, how you care for yourself or your family, these are signs that perhaps this worry is becoming toxic to you, Stein said. And so that is when starting to say, what are my limits? When do I need to put my phone into sleep mode? Stein recommends leaning into your local environment where things don't feel as conflicted and don't feel as if they're at a boiling point, and taking those moments in. I can step outside and the leaves are changing, and I can take my dog for a walk, or I can enjoy somebody doing art in the corner, Stein added. Children are beginning to soak up election stress from their parents and other adults, which is why Stein recommends that adults step back and take a look at history. As we move through president after president in our country, the world continues on, and so when I talk with parents, that's one thing I really want them to work with their children. Baby Haggis is the new Mudang. A pygmy hippo is born in Edinburgh. Move over, Mudang, there's a new pygmy in town. The Royal Zoological Society of Scotland's Edinburgh Zoo announced Monday that their own tiny pygmy hippo named Haggis was born October 30th to parents Otto and Gloria. The newborn calf is doing really well, according to Johnny Appleyard, hoofstock leader at Edinburgh Zoo. It is amazing to see her personality begin to shine already, Appleyard continues in a statement issued by the zoo. Visitors already enamored by photos and videos of the shiny, chubby creature will have to wait a while before making a trek to see her in person. The first 30 days are critical for her development, so the pygmy hippo house will be closed for now to allow us to keep a close eye on Mum and the baby at this sensitive time, Appleyard said. Pygmy hippos, native to forests and swamps of West Africa, are endangered animals according to the International Union for Conservation of Nature. There are just an estimated 22,000 that remain in the world, mainly in Liberia, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and the Ivory Coast, due to habitat loss and being hunted for bushmeat, according to the Pygmy Hippo Foundation. Haggis's birth comes as the world remains obsessed over the birth of Thailand's Mudang, who is such a viral sensation visitors can only see her for 5 minutes during limited days of the week. While Thailand's Mudang has become a viral global icon, it is important to remember that pygmy hippos are incredibly rare, Appleyard said. It is great to have our own little ambassador right here in Edinburgh to connect with our visitors and help raise awareness of the challenges the species faces in the wild. That is all for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you had a good election day. Goodbye!